We're now streaming live with a backup recording, and momentarily I'm going to start the Zencaster stream. So let me just confirming that our live stream is going okay.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like it is, but I'm just looks like we're good. Looks like we're good.
I like how you do this like we're launching a space shuttle.
Yep.
I like that.
I
like
mean-
I am opening the pod bay doors.
Yep.
And I am extending the mechanical
you need to have
arm.
a system. You need a
Yep.
checklist.
Yeah, you need a checklist, Jeff. Or else
I like it. I
things
like it.
get forgotten and left behind, you know? And then
Save lives.
and then Zencaster crashes and we have no backup recording. So here we go. And Roxana. Also, Roxana, what do you want me to mention about? Is there anything specifically you want me to mention? Do you want me to plug your review or anything like that?
No, it's fine. Somebody asked me this yesterday, and I was like, you could just say that I'm a pop culture critic. Yeah, it's fine. I actually didn't review this. I just voted for it in every way that I could. So
I'll say, Roxana,
I don't want your listeners to find any of my other work.
Yeah.
You want whatever.
You want to tie this off.
Yeah.
There's no connection.
I don't want to sully my work with your listeners' eyeballs.
Yeah. Okay. You're a freelance critic whose work has appeared in
Pajiba, Crooked Marquee, Vulture, AV Club.
Okay. Great.
Cool.
What is that? What is that sound that was just happening just now? Did anyone hear that?
I heard something. I don't know.
All right. Well, Roxana, the only thing I'll mention also is if you need to mute or cough or do whatever, if you could hit that mute icon next to your name. You see it? The little microphone? Yep. Just hit that microphone. You'll mute yourself. And then unmute when you're ready to talk. That's all. So if you need to make noises of any kind, just hit that button before.
Just random yowling, you know.
Yep. All right. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. That was from the trailer for Nomadland, the new film by director Chloe Zhao. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. After losing everything in the Great Recession, a woman embarks on a journey through the American West, living as a van-dwelling modern-day nomad. Joining us today on the Slash Filmcast for our review of Nomadland, she is a freelance critic whose work has appeared at Pajiba.com, Crooked Marquee, Vulture, and AV Club. Roxana Hadadi, welcome back to the Slash Filmcast. Roxana, how goes it tonight?
It goes. It goes, guys. Thanks for having me on.
It goes. Perhaps the defining statement of our era. Thanks so much for joining us. Curious what you thought of Nomadland, which obviously has a lot of critical acclaim, has been nominated for many awards, and looks like it might be on track to win Best Picture, but we'll see. Certainly in contention for Best Director. Roxana, what did you think of Nomadland?
I really loved Nomadland as a tone poem about the failures of America and the American promise and the American dream. I think that Chloe Zhao has done a really good job exploring that theme in all of her work, especially in this movie and in The Rider. And so for me, it really resonated with this idea of what do we expect our lives to be, and how do you go from being someone who is stationary and comfortable to sort of hitting the road and joining this other culture and community. So I found it very evocative and beautiful and depressing and all the things that I want movies to be. But it's interesting now that the movie is finally out. I feel like we've been talking about it for a year. Nobody was actually able to see it. But now that it's out, I feel like there's been sort of this interesting oppositional take that argues that it's romanticizing American failures. And so it's been really interesting to see that sort of backlash play out.
That's quite a take.
I think you're specifically referring to Richard Brody's review of the New Yorker, yeah?
Yes, there was also some stuff I saw on different corners of film Twitter that argued that the movie comes from an angle of white privilege and that you couldn't make this movie, or it wouldn't be the same movie, to consider this experience from a non-white perspective. So it's been interesting to see those sort of two different takes on what this movie is doing sort of play out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that latter point, by the way. But Devindra, let's go to you first. What did you think of Nomadland?
Oh yeah, I thought it was astounding, and I think putting it, this is a movie about the failure of America, as Roxana said, and that's pretty much it. This is what the movie is hammering home, and I think Chloe Zhao tells her stories in such like a naturalistic and realistic ways. At times, this movie feels like a documentary, and it feels like the line between a fictional narrative and a documentary and just something that's true to life really blurs in this film. I absolutely loved it, and just the way it explores kind of quietly, Amazon is featured in this movie, right? And at one point, Frances McDormand's character goes and works in an Amazon shipping facility, and it's not like a bold statement about like, man, look at how evil this is, right? It's more like she walks into this building that has a sign that is so large, it's like a spaceship looming above her, and it's just like it's her only option, right? In a country where there are fewer and fewer options, one of the things she can do is, pack things into boxes and deal with that work. It doesn't really comment on that, but I do think framing even just that, like putting like people who are really struggling right now, all they can do is work for Amazon or do things like Uber or whatnot. I think that really frames the problems of society in here, because her character is somebody who was living comfortably in a company town until that company disappeared, and the town literally disappeared. Um, it is astounding that it makes me think of just how much of our lives uh, we let the companies we work for just take charge. We're a country where our healthcare are very, the fact if we can live or die or deal with illnesses is tied directly to our capital value and how much we can work and how good our jobs are. And I think this movie just really hammers a lot of that home. I don't Yeah, I don't know about the romanticizing failure angle here. And, I think maybe this particular community, it does seem like it's mostly white, but there are definitely a lot of similar groups. I'm not sure if they all consider themselves nomads, but people who are just trying to make ends meet, and find themselves, the easiest way for them to survive is to have a mobile home and find a community where they could kind of take care of each other in a way. And yeah, that to me doesn't seem particularly tied to race or anything, but maybe that's something we can explore. I feel like the only thing that rings a little untrue to this movie is because it stars Frances McDormand, right? And seeing her step into this community, and I've read like during filming, she traveled with a lot of nomads or actual nomads featured in the movie. I think you could make the argument that like, yeah, it is kind of like stepping into this universe and maybe not fully understanding it, but I think the empathy and the artistry and beauty in this film kind of negates that a little. I do think like it really does give us a good lens. But yeah, if I were to compare this to The Writer or something, that is a movie that feels so real and natural because the people featured were basically playing themselves. This movie doesn't quite have that, but it is astounding on its own level, I'd say.
Jefferson Kanata, your thoughts on Nomadland?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Nomadland are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
I don't know if Roxana remembers this this ritual that we go through.
Yeah.
I sort of do.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's not something I would choose personally. I don't enjoy it. It's a lot of work. But our illustrious host, Dave Chen, he has certain ground rules. Well, one ground rule, really. And that is there must be a limerick in every episode or he walks. This is the language that he's used. And I say it in a tone of voice that does not convey the intensity and let's say pure rage.
You're
with
already,
which
I mean,
he's
you're already
conveyed.
pretty intense right now, Jeff. So
Yeah, no, I
guess...
know. And I'm saying there's a level above that you've hit.
Wow. Okay. All right.
That,
I don't
made
remember
it very
that way.
clear to me.
I don't remember it that way, but I trust you completely.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm just trying. I'm just saying. All right. Here's the limerick. A performance devoid of vanity that speaks to our cultural sanity. No plot or events. It just presents an exquisite view of humanity.
Nicely done, Jeffrey. Beautifully. As
Thank you.
elegant as the film itself.
I agree with everything that Roxana and Devindra have said so far, but I'd go a bit further actually, because while it is about all of those things, the economic realities of America, circa the years this takes place, and now, um, I found myself, here we are in the midst of a global pandemic still, and just last week on this very podcast, I think in our After Dark, actually,
Mhm.
we talked about all of the thought processes that we've gone through about potentially, me personally and my wife. Excuse me, I'm not choking up. I have a throat issue. I apologize. My wife and I talked about moving and leaving California, trying to maybe live someplace else. I think these ideas of where do I find myself? What
Mhm.
is important are I think I'm certainly facing them. My family is certainly facing them in a new way and with a new intensity in the midst of this pandemic. And clearly this movie was made before the pandemic, but I think it comes out at a unique time when I receive it with a feeling that I think is akin to what this character is feeling. Like, yes, the economic realities are what thrust her into this position, but I think she finds something in this in the course of living this lifestyle that she finds desirable. And she has a couple of options, a couple of moments of the option to sort of exit that kind of lifestyle, and she chooses to return to it. And I think the part of the beauty of this movie and part of what makes it so exquisite to my eye is the notion of sort of asking those questions of what's important, right? What is really human, and what do we need, and are things important, are people important, is the place we live important, is connecting with nature in some profound way important. And we see her sort of move through these beautiful vignettes. Roxana used a great phrase, a tone poem, which I think is accurate. And I found it so moving. Like this movie doesn't have, a 3-act structure. It doesn't have a plot to speak of. It doesn't have an antagonist other than life itself and time. But it speaks, I mean, it is about death. It is about life. It is about the passage of time. And it speaks to all of those things. There are profound moments. I was really moved by this movie, not just because of what it had to say about the economic realities of the world, but about just like what it is to be a human being and what do we value and how do we move through this world? Like, what do we, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have basically not left a 2-mile radius in the last year. And more specifically, I haven't left my own house except in rare instances for prolonged periods of time over the last year. And to see a person who is moving through this beautiful countryside and experiencing all these wildly different elements of the American countryside. You have moments where she's in this kind of desolate desert Arizona section. There's a beautiful sequence in a rainstorm on a coast somewhere where it's the seas are violent and turbulent. I mean, all these different, we get into the snow. There's just the breadth of the experience of the main character was not lost on me as I sit in my house for the umpteenth day in a row, experiencing the same 4 walls, and there's something, there's a question that requires, that necessitates, that suggests, about what it is that is important, and I think this character makes a decision at several moments to make that life important to her. And I was very moved by this movie. I think it is definitely worthy of Best Picture, in my opinion. I loved it.
Well, I'm really glad all of you like the movie. And
Oh, I'm ready for this. Now.
Yeah, I'm really waiting.
I don't know, guys.
This, by the way, this is the other thing I wait for alongside Jeff's limericks is Dave's come down.
Yeah.
Jeff, it's consistently Jeff is like, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my life, followed by Wet Blanket Dave Chen. I mean, here's the thing. There are many things about this movie that are worth praising. And I've also pointed out that Chloe Zhao's The Rider it made my top 10 list that year. You know, it was a brilliant
incredible
film that I recommend to everyone. But this one just didn't do it for me. And but let me talk about what I liked about the movie first. You know, I liked you all have pointed out how amazing the cinematography is, and I echo that. I think it you know, as somebody who has driven across the country a couple times, I have there's just so much you don't really understand how large America is until you like drive all the way across it, and there's so much of it that's just beautiful. You know, there's so much of it that's just like breathtaking to behold. And you when you're driving across, particularly like the West, the Midwest area, like you understand a little bit like how settlers must have felt when they first came here and they saw like the promise of this vast open land and how much could be done with it. And that's one of the things that I think this movie really brings out is if you are a nomad, you can see like a lot of America, and there is a lot of beauty to be found there. And so so for me, that's what I'm going to primarily remember about this movie, you know, as I come away from it, is just how well it captures America. I think that the messages of the movie are a little bit muddled. I think that Roxana, you alluded to this movie seems to, from my interpretation, have a bit of nostalgia for quote unquote the way things were, right? And it kind of opens with this text about, I think it's a gypsum mine, right, in Empire, Nevada.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, like this society is changing so much, and like, wasn't it all like great, like, or at least better in the olden days, right?
When there were
And-
company towns.
Right,
Yeah.
when they're company.
I don't. Let me just say, the movie presents that as a fact, and that is something that existed because we know there's Hershey, Pennsylvania, right? There are company towns all over this country, but at no point in this movie did that seem like that was the good old days. It was more like that was the day I could actually have a home, you know, and that's it. But not like saying
that
I
doesn't
wish
seem
I
like a
could return to
better
that.
like that didn't seem like a superior option for this person. Like it.
I
it
mean,
didn't-
it is.
she-
It's a
she's-
good. I'm
she
not saying
spends-
it's
she
like
spends most of the movie being unable to let go of the way things were. Like it's literally in the text of the film where
I think it's much
it's
more about
her husband.
It's more about her
Yeah.
husband. Yeah.
It's her husband.
I do feel like there is that point though where she
Mhm.
is talking about all the things that her town used to have.
Yeah.
And so I do think that yes, a lot of it is like about her husband, but I mean, but there is the argument which is true and fact that like these towns existed and once upon a time they did provide all of these amenities, but I took that more as like a microcosm for like capitalism at large
Yes.
Mm.
and the idea that like once upon a time these things were possible and like frankly generationally that is true, these things were possible once upon a time. So like
Mhm.
I see what you're saying and I agree. I don't love the idea of being nostalgic for for like the time corporations carved up the American West and like basically kept people employed there. But I don't know. But again, there is complexity here. I'm sorry. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, go ahead. You wanted to.
Well, I was just saying one other point I'd add is that, you know, no spoilers, but I think one of the things she mentions about what made that house she lived in so special was that it looked out to nothing.
Mhm.
Right. And I think the movie suggests that there was always a part of her, and certainly her sister explicitly says this.
Mhm.
There was
Why'd you go to the
always a
middle of
part.
nowhere? Yeah.
Yeah, there was always a part of her that wanted to just be away from everything. And I don't think that the movie, I don't think the main character of the film feels like, boy, if we all lived in company towns, everything would be great. I think she liked the fact that her husband was alive and that she could look out and see this potential. And in the movie, she realizes that potential. She achieves that potential. She goes out and lives the life that she kind of always wanted, I think. So I don't think that the movie is saying things were better for her before. I think certainly she's in grief, continued grief over her husband's passing. But I think the movie's thesis is that she has found a better life for herself, despite all of the hardship and difficulty along the way.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a valid interpretation of the events of the film, and I wouldn't. I guess I would say there's a vague. The way I would describe it is not things were so awesome and like why can't we go back to the before time. I think I would more describe it as there's a vague longing for what came before, as opposed to like it was definitively better, and that is in some ways captured by her relationship with her husband. My big takeaway from this movie is this idea of wandering as connected to the grief process, right? And that like my sense from watching the film is that like she wanders because like it's her way of processing what happened to her and her loss. And to me that's a very powerful idea. So I did appreciate that. But the movie is very like here's the extremely brief case against this movie, because I don't want to come out against this movie, guys. Like, you know, like this is
what?
You don't want to be part of that 5%.
What you were gonna do. Come on.
This is a massive deal that Chloe Zhao is gonna potentially win best director. Like, I don't want to be the guy that's coming out against Chloe Zhao. You know what I mean?
Say
Too late.
No,
Say it.
I'll just say that the movie is very episodic. I've already made this criticism before, and when I talked about this movie in the past, that like I feel like there is this kind of this detachment when I see a story like this. Like to me, when I am watching this movie, I feel like it's almost like I am clinically observing this character in this situation that like it is expected that the audience will not be able to like intimately relate to, and you're kind of just watching her do these things, as opposed to I feel like the movie is kind of putting me into her perspective, her subjective perspective, and allowing me to experience what she experiences as she experiences it. Like that's my experience of the film, and it's possible you guys all had a different experience, right? But like for me, because of how episodic it was, it's not very plot driven, right? And it is part documentary, part fictional film, as you guys pointed out. Like a lot of the people that are interviewed, Jeff Canada, I remember when we talked about Sound of Metal. There's a guy in the movie played by Paul Raci. Yeah. And we thought like, oh, they just found a guy who's like, they just found a guy.
How could an actor play this guy? You have to just find this guy.
That's
but
then
impossible.
we found out that he's actually, we found out he's actually
amazing.
He's a very talented actor named Paul Raci, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And and in this movie, they actually like Chloe Zhao actually interviewed the people who were featured in the book Nomadland, on which this film is based. And they are telling presumably true stories about their lives in the film.
So much so that when an actor shows up, it's kind of jarring.
Like, I think I agree. And you guys have both pointed, or Devinder's pointed that out. But yeah,
well, let me just say, I've been watching a lot of The Expanse lately. You know, as we've discussed, and to see David Strathairn come from his like patois space accent to being a down and out guy in Nomadland, it was jarring. It just felt weird.
He was unrecognizable.
Have you guys not rewatched The Firm lately? One of his masterpieces? Come on.
I have not.
It took me like a good 10 minutes to realize it was David Strathairn in the movie.
How dare you? How
I was like watching the movie, and then
how is that possible?
Yeah,
I immediately said good night and good luck right when he showed up.
I just said hot.
You thought
you saw that beard and you were like,
you found his buffoonery amusing, huh, Roxana?
But not a buffoon. How dare you? How dare you?
Why would you have a box with an open bottom? Why?
Dude,
that wasn't his fault.
Now we're into spoilers, but that moment took my breath away. There's rarely a moment in a movie, like major characters have been murdered in movies and it didn't affect me as much as that moment, you know? I was like, oh, no.
couple of other quick observations, and then we can and get the spoilers. But one of them is, yeah, I do think so. Devindra, totally understand that like that poverty often hits people of color harder than it hits white people. But I
Yeah.
do think there's something about the nomad life that's distinctly white. Like 99% of the people who are nomads in this movie are white, and that's
Mhm.
because it's not a super great situation if you're traveling through the Midwest and you're not white.
Right.
Like I would not want to be a
For sure,
person
for sure.
who's not white traveling across the Midwest by myself. So
Sleeping in places you shouldn't be sleeping.
exactly,
Yep.
you can imagine all the ways that could go wrong, and so I do think that there is there's something distinctly white about at least the specific nomadic lifestyle portrayed in the film. And then the other thing is just that a disappointment I had in the film is also that I don't think it does a particularly good job describing the practicalities of the nomadic existence. I mean, you have Frances McDormand shitting in a bucket, but like beyond
It really
that,
does lay out how the shitting in the bucket works too. Like, come on, they give you a tutorial, size of buckets, everything.
But yeah, I mean, there's like hints at it, but I think that like, the
I don't
there's
know, man.
sorry, go ahead.
I
Joe.
think this movie is the epitome of show not tell.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
I love that it just shows you these little moments over and over, like little thing. Like there's a moment where she just plays the flute. It's like, what a cool detail that I would never in a million years come up with to put in this movie.
But is that an important detail?
Yeah.
Right. I guess
it
like
provides
there's
texture.
There's things
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like there's a part of the movie when he's like one of the gentlemen in the movie giving a lecture says, "Here's the 10 rules of stealth parking. Like how to avoid detection in a parking lot." And then they never say what it is. And there's things like
Because it doesn't matter.
They've okay, I'm pretty sure it matters when you're living out there in a van.
This isn't
So-
a how-to movie about like becoming a nomad.
No, but I guess.
But it
what I'm
sort of
saying-
is,
what-
though,
what I'm
because
saying-
we're
yeah.
with her as she is
Mhm,
learning how to become a nomad. I mean, it sort of is.
I guess
But
what
I don't think the point of the. Go ahead, Dave.
Well,
Sorry.
that's. I guess that's. I think you and I are in, as my law professor in college used to say, violent agreement with each other. Which is to say, I don't think you should watch this movie if you are expecting a sort of realistic depiction of what it is like to be a nomad, because most of the details of what that is like are excised. And so that may be fine. Like and as I said, that's not the part of the movie that most rang true to me. But I think that if that's what you're looking for, and by the way, it's reasonable to assume that because that's basically what the book that this movie is based on is about. Then you will be disappointed in the movie.
That just seems, I would say, a little unfair, right? That comes to the whole wanting the movie to be something else, I guess, kind of argument, because it does go into little things like all the nooks and crannies she puts into her caravan, the way you see people live. Like everybody has built out theirs differently, the ways you protect your car to be safe. She had no spare tire. Like it is not like a manual about how to do this, but I think it does give you a lived-in sense of like, this is hard. The terrifying thing where you get the knock on the window in the middle of the night because you're parked somewhere where you shouldn't. The reality of it, at least she can wash her clothes, but it's not apparently very great. And then just the idea, right? Just all this movie needs to do is plant the ideas into your head, right? The idea of people have to, shit in a bucket that is in the car with them or in the van or whatever. They don't need to necessarily show that, and they did, but they like it's that, and it's sort of like, okay, things you need to do to be careful about, stealth parking. That concept, just the awareness, like, oh, you can't just park anywhere. Apparently, you have to think a little harder, right? That's something these people have to deal with. I don't. Yeah, to me, it didn't feel like it hurt the movie too much because it is just a lens on how they're surviving, and to me, that part felt true. And that felt a lot like the writer. It is just an observant thing. It's not like getting you into the heads of people directly.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second after Jeff goes?
No, please.
Yeah.
I was just my devil's advocate question is, if you liked this movie, how did you feel about like Into the Wild?
Right.
Because I think that
actually great comparison, actually.
Because like I love Into the Wild, and I totally can very much understand McCandless's motivation wanting to tap out of society, but remember being told that I was an asshole for liking his motivations. And so it's very interesting because I feel like Into the Wild had like a very specific cultural backlash against Krakauer focusing on this kid who found society lacking
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
wanting to connect with the natural world. And so I feel like it was interesting how much that felt like in opposition to this movie, where it seems like a lot of, and I liked this movie, so I'm not trying to say that it's bad or whatever,
Hmm.
but it does seem like there's a lot of like, oh, this is great, like she found herself on the road, like that. So it's just interesting to see very oppositional takes for something that I think is fundamentally similar.
So just so I
Mhm.
understand, Roxana, you're saying that Into the Wild people had a backlash because they're like, "F this guy," like the
Yes,
main
he's
character.
selfish.
He's
Yeah,
what an asshole that guy. Whereas
right,
people are saying they
If only he'd
love.
get what's coming to him.
right.
Whereas people are saying they love this. Yeah, yeah. It's not like
Spoilers for Into the Wild,
he
I
experiences
guess.
any consequences for that.
Right.
And then whereas in this movie, people are like, this is a wonderful celebration of like the possibilities inherent in like traveling through
Right.
America and things like that. Is what you're.
Yes.
And there's a
Yes.
weird contrast in that. Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff, any thoughts on that question and or like the topic before we were discussing?
Well, not to return to the topic before, but as far as I kind of am reminded of how people talk about jazz, where it's about the notes,
It's the notes you
that
don't
are not
play.
played.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean you mock, but I think that's exactly how I appreciated this movie. There's a ton of information that is not given to you, right?
Hmm.
There are tons of questions I had. How did she get this job? How did she get that job? Why did she stay when they left? What, there are tons of moments where I'm like, but the movie isn't about that, right? It isn't a linear telling of how this woman transitioned into this lifestyle. That's just not the movie at all. It is, as Roxana eloquently said, a tone poem. It is the feeling that the movie is trying to convey of that lifestyle. It is dreamlike in how time and place are sort of, you just move in and out of these areas and these moments of her existence, and it is like that analogy to jazz, where a lot of it is what's left out that I found so compelling, because it compresses time and it compresses her experience into a more, I think, a more
Yeah.
ephemeral state that landed on me in a more emotional way than I think like a step-by-step manual of how to go into this life would have.
I will say it almost sounds like you're describing like an elliptical, like a Malick film or something, Jeff. And I
Mhm.
did not get that sense at all. Is the thing. Like I
Yeah.
love this movie, but it is very much like it is just a glimpse. It is it's a camera observing her distantly, and maybe you want something a little more internal. Maybe you want a monologue sometimes. Maybe you want to know more of what she's thinking. And I think Frances McDormand does a good job of selling what's going on with this character and her motivations, even when she makes crazy decisions. I'd say like seeing what's going on with this character and how they build her up, and she's essentially somebody who seemed like always kind of always want to do her own thing, and now she kind of has her chance to do something that's very very different. But one thing we haven't talked about is the idea of community, and that's really where I come down on this movie, where she has been searching for community after her community was ripped away from her, and the people she finds, the people who are around near her town, they seem to offer help, but they also look down on her in a way. And to me, that was the real revelatory aspect of this journey. Like she is finding people who have gone through similar situations as her and can understand her, because I get the feeling I've talked to folks like this who are older and they feel like they made the right decisions in a way, right? They did the things their teachers told them to do and their parents told them to do. They got a nice job, or they married, well or something, and then it just kind of falls apart. And what do you do? And it's a deconstruction of the American dream in a way where unless it happens to you, it's hard to really understand. A lot of people think she's just homeless and she describes herself as houseless, and I think that's essentially it. A lot of people can't see you as successful or somebody who is doing well if you don't have a home. And she finds these folks who have gone through hardship and have gone through their own things, but also have come to this realization too. That's why she can't stay with the nicer folks. She comes across nice houses all the time, but it's not her community.
I just
Can I
want
ask you guys a question? Oh, sorry, Dave. Did you want to respond to that?
Well, just first of all, I wasn't trying to mock you, Jeff. That's just one of my favorite things to say during a movie review is it's about the blank that the movie doesn't blank. So I just like saying that. It sounded like I was coming off mocking, but I wasn't trying to mock you
It
in
is
any
literally
way.
the Simpsons joke about jazz.
Yeah, I love that
Well.
phrase. So I apologize if I
yes.
came across mocking. Also, like I wasn't even necessarily bringing that up as a negative. I just want people to understand what the movie's about. But I wasn't bringing up like, hey, the movie is not a how-to or whatever. But I think that like I will just say that as somebody who reads on this topic, like I was a little surprised at how much of a tone poem it was versus like even a sort of dispassionate telling of some of these details of what it's like to live in this this lifestyle. So anyway, Jeff, go ahead, and then I'd love to get the spoilers.
I just wanted to ask the question if any of you in watching it were scared, right? Were you? Did you feel a menace? I kept
Jeff,
saying to my wife,
this is exactly what we're saying. By the way, like we are watching this movie a week after the shitstorm happened in Texas, right, where this country fundamentally failed to protect its citizens, to protect its infrastructure. The federal government is trying to help now, but that state government did fuck all to protect Texans, and they're paying for it. And it's terrifying to see it all kind of fall apart. But what are you specifically referring to, Jeff?
well, I meant even on just a more intimate level. I just kept saying, if this movie, if where we're going is this woman is attacked in some way or something, I'm gonna be I'm not gonna be able to handle
it's scary. Yeah, there's some scary bits. Yeah,
but I think that one of the things I loved most about the movie is this notion that I want to believe is still true about America, which is that people are good. Groups of people usually bad, but people individually are decent to each
smaller
other.
communities.
Anyway,
I don't know if that's just America. I feel like that's the thing I try to believe in people in general, but I do think you look at the things that get in the way, right? You look at the things that kind of make that difficult, and to me it's the looming specter of capitalism and how much it's failed America in this movie. Like that is the thing that is kind of hurting any sense of community. And looking at the last year, like, god damn, yes, the fact that we still have a very vocal contingent of people who whine about wearing a piece of cloth over their face, even though it can help stop a goddamn pandemic. It really does make me wonder about our sense of a community as a country.
Yeah,
I wasn't afraid, and I think it was because of the racial element, which I know is not necessarily what this conversation is going to be dominated by, and that's fine. But just personally for me, because it was Frances McDormand, and because clearly the vibe of the movie is like, no, people are good, like you can find a helping hand. Like as Devinder said, like it does very much trace how she gets these jobs. It's through a lot of connections from other people who have like run this circuit before. Like she certainly has a lot of people helping her.
Yeah.
But I almost, maybe I don't want to put words in Dave's mouth, but I almost felt a little bit of distance because quote unquote nothing bad happens to her. And so I don't know if that's fair, but I can understand watching this movie and thinking like, okay, so there was no real hardship aside from her van breaking down one time. Like I can
Yeah.
understand applying a somewhat
Sure.
critical, skeptical lens to that. And I feel like you almost see it because I don't know if any of you saw this, but there was a tweet going around of like a for your consideration package for this movie that went
Oh
out.
my god.
And it was like a bounty of fresh
So
produce. And
let's
just like
let's explain what this is, Roxana, for those who might not be aware. But
Sure.
basically, award season is very political and is often millions and millions of dollars go into, let's just say, convincing voters that a certain film should be voted for Best Picture. And often, what that comes in the form of are, they send you like the screeners in order so you can watch the movie and vote on it in time versus needing to go to theater. But sometimes they also send you like little tchotchkes. I actually got some Nomadland stuff as well. I didn't get the cornucopia of goodness,
fresh produce.
Yeah,
right.
fresh produce. Like it's in like they send some people like a meal kit. You can kind of tell how high up someone is,
Oh,
in
the tiers are very
the tiers
obvious.
on the
Yeah.
ranking of film critic
Yes.
by how good the
Yes.
package they receive is. And
To
I
be
got
perfectly
a
honest, I
yeah.
got a 2XL T-shirt.
I got a T-shirt, right? I got the T-shirt,
Yes.
and I got
Yes.
what is it? Vanity license plate that said Nomadland
As
on
did
it.
I.
Yep. Okay.
You
Yes.
can do a
And
lot
then-
with the T-shirt,
But yes,
yeah.
somebody got a huge basket of food, and it's a weird bonus package to send in a movie that is theoretically supposed to be about things like
There
food
was
insecurity.
Nomadland branded wine in that package. It's just
Right.
like
So
much cringe.
Yikes!
Yeah, but
Yikes.
see, I feel like that is fundamentally maybe the muddled messaging that Dave was alluding to. Because if you watch this movie and all you think is, oh man, like hitting the road is beautiful, it seems easy, all I need is like, to get a van, then like I do think you could watch this movie and also think like, oh, all this fresh produce is nice. But like
do you
The
really
bounty
think anybody?
of America. Yeah.
Do you really
Yes.
think anybody would come away from this movie thinking, "Boy, that seemed easy"?
Jeff, I can.
yeah, a little bit I do.
Really?
Yeah, Jeff.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
I
shit.
really do.
Jeff, let me give you a pro tip on this podcast. Anytime you want to ask the question, do you really think? The answer is 100% of the time yes.
Always yes.
It's
100%
always
yes.
because you've asked that question many times, and I've always had to chime in. Yes, Jeff. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said
I'll
the
just,
thing I
I'll
just
stay
said.
over here and shut the fuck up.
No,
Well,
I'm not
I
saying.
just mean,
shut the fuck
like-
up. I'm saying the answer is always yes. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Yes.
This wasn't like a Dardenne movie, right? I mean, it doesn't end with a fundamental neo-realist tragedy. It ends with, like she finds herself and she hits the road again, but like I do think people could watch this and think like all you need to do is remove the physical, remove all of your stuff from your life and go full Tyler Durden and like things will be okay.
Yeah,
And I
this
think,
is full
you know-
Marie Kondo. This is the most Marie
Right.
Kondo movie ever made. I could totally see how people come away with that impression. One thing I want to say, like we were talking about, like how nothing truly bad happens to her in this movie. I suppose that's true, right? That is true given the events of the movie. But also, this to me felt like a film that is taking place after almost everything bad has happened. to
could
her.
have already happened, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's a great point of Indra. All right. I mean, I think we've already gotten into spoilers, so maybe I'll just put the warning at the top of the show. It's safe to say we're already in full spoilers for the movie. And Roxana, you alluded to the ending of the movie. And the ending of the movie is she goes back home and then like decides like it's kind of her letting go of her husband, right? And then like hitting the road again is kind of what happens at the very end of the film. Let me ask you guys this question, because I think we disagree about every single one of my points that I brought up so far, and I'm like, hey, let's keep
You
that
did
record.
really well this week.
Let's
Dave.
keep that
Yeah.
record going. I wanna see how many more points we can disagree on. I want to ask you guys about the fact that one of my issues with the movie is I don't think we really have access to her grief until the final scene that she has with that guy, that gentleman on the side of the road. And they really kind of have a heart-to-heart, and she kind of explains what it is that is driving her this whole film. And that kind of encapsulates my whole problem with the film, is that, like, I don't really feel like I have access to this person's inner life for most of the film.
I don't know.
Yep. Go ahead. Have
Yep.
at it.
No, I don't know. No, all I can say is I don't know, because I think of I can think of so many movies that work this way too,
Right.
where you can't really, the distance is the point in a way. This is supposed to be kind of a far off look at this particular life, and I do think from the beginning of the film you get a sense of like she has lost a lot. She's living in this van that seems like just crammed in so many ways. She takes a moment to smell her husband's clothes. There are little points all throughout, and yeah, I don't think the movie doesn't fundamentally sketch out the grief, right? It's not like, my name is Fern, I lost my house, I am sad about my husband. Begin movie. you know?
And that's exactly what I was asking for. Jeff
I
Kanata,
know.
curious what your thoughts are on that this point.
No, I agree with Devindra. I would have brought up the smelling of the clothes as literally
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first thing we see her do in the entire movie, and I don't.
You know what
think
should have
that-
happened though? It should have just like froze, right? Frame freeze. How did I get to this situation?
You
Yeah.
might be asking yourself, how did I,
No,
Fern, get into
there's a
this?
name tag on the jacket, and it says Mr. Fern.
All right. Well, okay. I think you guys are doing a great job eviscerating my point. But I'll just say that I think I wouldn't even be bringing it up if I felt like I had gotten
Yeah.
like better access to, what she's going through during the rest of the film. And I think, the point that it's a show film and not tell is a good one, but I just didn't even feel like it was showing that much. But
Do
that's
you
me.
think if you had seen this in the theater and you were trapped in an indie theater and had to like, see this movie, yeah, my dream right now. That's all where I want to be right now.
Yes.
But I do think like this is one of those movies where if it's just a pure focus of being in a theater, not having your phone, not being able to talk to anybody, and just like enveloping yourself in this film, maybe it would have hit differently. I don't know.
Well, I already brought up like how much I appreciated the aesthetics of the film, and I think that definitely was not lost on me. So,
But it's the connection because it just sounds like you fundamentally didn't connect with it, which is it's fine. That happens sometimes. It's totally
It's
fine.
fine.
It's fine. Which is also how Dave reviewed Ted Lasso. It's fine. So now you know how it feels,
No.
David Chen.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not even
fine.
interested in watching that, so I wouldn't even say it's fine.
Oh, Roxana, if I got a show for you.
yeah,
I'm good. I'm really fine. Yeah.
So yeah, Roxana, I'm in agreement with you about kind of the way it presents the nomadic lifestyle, which is like a little bit. I think that there's a lot of things. I think you guys bring up Devindra, particularly the litany of things you brought up. That was pretty good. About like the components of the nomadic lifestyle it shows. But there's also like a lot of things it doesn't show, in my opinion, that I think do give kind of this gloss to this lifestyle in some ways. And like one of them is like I think at one point they're like in the hospital, and I'm like,
Yes.
what's the deal with that?
Sure,
Like what's the consequences of that? Like.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital recently, and I don't live a nomadic lifestyle, and I was terrified of what's going to happen.
I am
to me
shocked
afterwards.
that the movie didn't just be like, I am terrified of what this bill is going to look like or something.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So
I'm thinking of the numerous things that I witnessed this character do, and just shocked that anybody would think that you could come away from this going, "Boy, that seems easy." It's like
There's nothing glossy about this movie. Yeah.
literally shoveling rocks in the middle of the night, shitting in a bucket,
Wiping
having
shit
to-
off of a toilet seat. 'Cause
yes,
she has a job.
dude,
Hey,
I
sure.
almost vomited by watching the
Oh,
vomit
Jeff,
being wiped
have you-
off the toilet seat.
But isn't
I
that
hope
just
that was
being
vomit.
working? Isn't that
Yeah.
just being working class in America?
It's true. It's true.
But- which is
I've
not
had bathroom
easy.
duty. I've had bathroom
And
duty
no,
to deal with.
and it's not
It's
right,
great.
and it's not easy. I'm not saying
yeah,
that those
I
jobs
wouldn't
are
say it's easy. Yeah.
but I'm saying we see her in the situations without seeing how she got to them.
Yeah.
You don't see her having to like interview for these jobs or like making those connections or presents herself like you
Mhm.
see her as the woman who is spouting Shakespeare sonnets and then getting jobs through her friends. I mean, like,
No. We literally have a scene where she goes in and the woman says, "I have nothing for you. There's no work. There's you.
Right.
What skills do you have? What have you
Right.
done with your life?" And she explains
much,
the like two.
unfortunately.
Well, I worked
Yeah.
in the company store for a little, and she's like, you have no skills. We have that scene, right?
right in the very beginning, and then she
Yeah.
gets all those jobs through her friends.
I-
So I just think that I think that the movie in some ways then is trying to have it both ways. I think it is trying to say that like you can build a life stringing together a series of part-time jobs that people do not take seriously. So in that way I think it is acknowledging the difficulty of gaining traction in a quote unquote career. But after that scene is established, like she
Mhm.
does follow where the jobs take her. And so I think that it is a commentary on like the underclass of workers that we never see. Like, how many of us knew there was a beet harvest, right? Like,
Right.
how many of us really think about like where our food comes from? And so I think there's some really striking, beautiful images there, like her and the mountain of beets and washing the dirt out of her hair. Like, I think all of those are very evocative and poignant. But I just think that it seems like the movie, like you said, as a tone poem, because like you agreed with me in the beginning, like it does sort of skip over the steps of how we got to that place. So I don't know. I just think that
No, no,
sometimes it seems
I don't.
like the movie is trying
Mhm.
to have it both ways, and in that way sort of muddles its messaging. Is it difficult to be working class or not? Like,
Uh,
I don't
I
know.
don't.
sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead, Jeff.
I
Yeah.
don't disagree that it's a tone poem or that it leaves a lot out. I just, for me, it's hard to imagine this notion that you guys that would walk away thinking, boy, that she seems like she has such an easy,
Sorry, sorry.
desirable life.
I
Yeah.
apologize
I,
if I came across as conveying that it was easy. That was not my intention. What I intended to say
Oh, so
was,
when I said, do you actually think that?
yeah,
And you
yeah,
said, every time I say
yeah,
those words,
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
answer
yeah,
is
yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
So now
Well,
the answer is no. Boy, it
it's
sure seems like maybe I shouldn't have been rebuked quite so.
well, I don't think
perhaps.
anybody's saying that like the senior citizens who are forced to work in an Amazon
Mhm.
distribution center so they can feed themselves. I don't think anybody is saying that is easy.
Yeah, well,
I'm just
I think
saying
the point I
like
was trying to make is that the movie conveys that it is easier than actuality, right? Like
right.
that's what I was trying to say. So that's what I thought you were going to finish that sentence with, Jeff. Is easier than actual reality,
Mhm.
and so
But
therefore
yeah,
the
we don't
rebuke
see
was
enough of the
deserved. No, I'm
struggle
just
in
joking.
between, right?
Yeah,
I think like that's a valid complaint. We don't see the struggle in between her trying to get these jobs and not getting them and struggling. But there is a lot of struggle in this movie. Is the
Sure.
thing. Like,
yeah.
so I do think like there's a shorthand to it, where yeah, somebody who's out there who clearly she wants to work. You know, she has proven she is kind of driven, and that's what she likes to do, because she could take the easy life. She could go to LA with her sister. She could hang out with David Strathairn and his beautiful grandchild, and who doesn't want that, you know? But she would rather work, and
Right.
that is the fundamental message of the movie to me. Like, yeah, she'll find work no matter what it is. It's not going to be great work. It's not going to be high paying work of any kind. And to me, that struggle is the movie in a way. But yeah, it could be clearer about some of those things.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, because the question is the movie about how difficult it is to be a nomad, which I think like we've definitive like sounds like we're all agreeing it's not really about that. There's like some components of it that illustrate why it might be difficult in some ways, but it's really
I
not
mean,
about that.
it's a part of a. I think a movie could be about many things. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
a
Yeah,
part of it. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
Well,
yeah,
this movie is about
well,
how
but
hard it is when someone
yeah,
dies.
yeah, I
yeah.
agree. No, Jeff, I completely agree. I think that's the thrust of it. But the reason I bring that up is because like we see she constantly declines opportunities like with David Strathairn to make her life easier, right? Like
Hmm.
Yeah,
she could have yeah,
this is why I think the movie is more about this particular character
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how she has found something that is not palatable to most people and yet for her somehow works. I think that's the message of this movie, that this individual always wanted this and didn't know it was a thing, and no one else in her life understands that, right? Everybody's like, hey, I'll give you a lifeline out of this existence, and she says, this is not a, I'm not suffering. This is what how I choose to live. I am more free. I am more free to live this way. It is hard. I
Hmm.
shit in a bucket, but her connection with the land and with these other individuals that she comes across, this feeling of being liberated from all of the things that we all think are the benefits of society, the benefits of a comfortable living. She feels our shackles and she feels liberated from them. And that's, to me, I didn't take this as like, this is how it would be if every single person just, cast off their belongings and got in a van. It's like this particular woman needed this and she found it. And
Sure. Yeah.
that was my takeaway.
Yeah, and I love there's a scene, by the way, where she and some of her friends go to the fancy RVs, and
Mm,
just seeing the disparity of the fancy RV, which is what I think a lot of people who watch this movie and be like, I would give up everything and just travel around the country. They will end up in maybe not a goddamn bus, but a nice RV with with a actual kitchen and maybe a bathroom or something. It is not as nice as being in a home, but it's better than shitting in a bucket in a van. And I think that stratification is there too. Some people do think of this as just fun, but they're taking a different, they have to treat it differently. It's a lot harder for them.
Uh, Jeff, I think that's a wonderfully articulated perspective on the film, and I think that's why I feel like the part about the movie with the class struggle, I think just from my perspective has less teeth to it because it's about somebody who has a choice, right? She has a choice to not live the lifestyle, right? And if it was somebody who was forced into this, then I think it would be a more enduring message about what is happening in America right now. But because it's not that, it's basically a more challenging version of Eat, Pray, Love. No, I'm being a little facetious.
Oh my
How
god!
dare you?
No, but
you should just led with that.
I
Yeah.
think that's a really good point. Like, a different version of this movie is a lot darker
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it does have a lot more teeth to it. But to me, what was so beautiful about it are the meditations along the way on death and friendship and nature and all these things that aren't really about the economic message. And it sort of allows the movie to be, as I said in my limerick, about humanity. Like it's about what it is to be human and what we need and what we want. I think the economic stuff is just a setup, and it's a very pertinent one, right? It is of our time, and perhaps if this movie was made like 6 months later than it was, somehow made in COVID times, maybe it would have, by nature, have to be more about that. But I one of the reasons I like it so much is because it's able to be so many things at once.
All right, Roxana, let's give you the last word. This has been a very spirited debate about the film, and I've enjoyed it. And I'm curious, like, if you have changed your opinion or if you've landed anywhere different about this film, because I think the three of you came into this really loving it, and I was more cool on it. I thought it was fine.
Dave is saying, "Did I make you hate the movie?"
Mm.
You should just
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever hate it because I think the technical mastery is just so impressive that even if it didn't connect with me on some fundamental level, I could respect it for what it did. But like, I am that person who is trying to see all the natural parks. Like, we canceled a few trips last year when the world shut down. So, like, in a certain way, I'm seeing these places. I'm like, oh, the Dakotas, we were supposed to go there. Okay, cool. So I do think, like, personally for me, it resonated. As a film, I do think what we sort of sussed out here is that if you can go into it thinking of it as a documentation of one woman's journey through grief and through rebirth, sort of using the working class experience and the itinerant lifestyle to tell that story, I think if you can get on that wavelength, then it is meaningful. But I think if we're trying to have a conversation about like what is the responsibility of cinema and like what are movies quote unquote supposed to do politically, then yeah, I think you might run into some trouble. So I think it's really your question of like what are you trying to get out of movies in general, and then I think that sort of might divide your take.
Yeah. Well put, Roxana, and appreciate you stopping by the Slash Filmcast this week to share your thoughts. All right, let's wrap things up. This episode of the Slash Filmcast was brought to you by our sponsors and our patrons over at patreon.com/filmpodcast. You can find more episodes of the show at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker and YouTuber Kyle Hillinger. Our weekly plugs music comes from Noah Ross. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week. In the meantime, Roxana, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
This week I'm continuing my Freaks and Geeks recaps for Vulture. I'm doing a Golden Globes piece for them about Nicole Kidman's career, ranking all of her performances, and you can find some other reviews of mine at Polygon and Pajiba.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we'll be discussing Minari, the new film by Lee Isaac Chung. So look forward to that. It should be a great conversation. Thanks for listening to the Slash Filmcast. We'll see you later. All right. And it looks like you're all uploaded. So
All right, cool. Thanks,
thank you,
guys.
Roxana,
Woo,
for
thank you.
joining us.
problem.
Roxana, great as always.
Appreciate
No problem,
Thank you.
guys. Thanks. All right, talk to you later. Bye.
Have a good
Bye.
night. Bye.
Bye.
All right, running post-production. We are still broadcasting live. Shall we just head right into the recording, gents? I think the show notes are all set.
Sure. Yeah.
Or
I
do we
can.
wanna-
So
wanna-
I have Minari in there. We could just wait until next week.
Yeah,
We
I
could
think let's
skip
just
that
wait till
part.
next week if that's cool with you.
Okay. Okay.
Jeff, I am sorry for the intensity of my rebuke. I don't know if you really took that personally, but I
It felt
apologize.
a little mean, but yeah, it's all right.
I think I was a little frustrated just because it's like we wouldn't be bringing that point up if we didn't think something along those lines. Maybe not exactly what you're saying, So I think I was responding to how your question might feel a little invalidating, but I acknowledge that I could have been nicer about it. So I'm sorry about that. All right, let me start the new recording. Here we go. We all here?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. I am still running my backup recording. We're still broadcasting live. We got 3 ads tonight, gentlemen. So I'm going to try to insert a break at 20, 40, and 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Do you want me to end with The Expanse so we can lead into Jeff? How about that?
Yeah, I think that's a
We
good
both
idea.
have The Expanse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not on season 4.
No, yeah, no. I'm just saying in general, so we can keep it all together. Okay.
Why don't we have Jeff second then?
Okay.
And have his expanse go into yours.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, whoops.
Switch around.
All right. All right. Let's see. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. Oh wait, actually, guys, I forgot. Do we have
I have
our
the thing. I have the
openings
thing.
prepped?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
let's just go into it. All right, here we go. Do yours have to do with the bucket, by the way, or can I do that one?
Can I have the bucket?
Can I have the bucket?
Does everybody want the bucket?
Yeah.
Everybody wants the bucket.
Does everyone want the
I
bucket?
think all of them should have to do with the bucket.
Yeah, we should all just do the bucket. Let's all do the bucket. 'Cause I actually have several. So yeah.
All right, ready? Here we go.
Uh-huh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I'm David Chen, and the last time I took a crap in a bucket in a van, they arrested me. But apparently it's okay to do in movies. Joining me today is Devinder Hardawar
I need the big bucket. Okay.
and Jeff Kanata.
Is this your bucket?
Is it big?
Thanks for joining us today on the Slash Filmcast. Today, as you might have surmised from what you just heard, our main review is going to be
Kind
Chloe
of shit in a
Zhao's,
bucket. Yeah.
Chloe Zhao's new movie Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand. We got Roxana Hadadi coming to join us for that part of the podcast. We're really excited about that. Before that, we got some what we've been watching, some weekly plugs for you, and you can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. All right. Before we get to that, I got an email I want to read. Should I do the emails bumper, even though it's just one email? What do you guys think? All right. Let's
Yes,
do.
we don't have the email bumper to not use it, Dave.
Here we go.
Bucket.
You should have dubbed over that at the very end.
last week we were graced with an email from Sue Brunning, and she is one of the people that manages the Sutton Hoo excavation over at the British Museum, and it was amazing to hear from her because she is famous and talented in her own right, and it's amazing that she listens to this podcast. Towards the end of that email discussion, Jeff Kanata asked the question, what is the deal with the tarp in the movie The Dig? So can we set the scene for people, Jeff Kanata? Like, in the movie The Dig, tarp is used, and like you have a question about it. So explain what's going on in the film and why you have a question about it.
In the UK, we know there's quite frequent rains, and in the movie, there are numerous moments when it is just torrential downpour, and there, our main character, who is very concerned about this archaeological dig, at certain moments in the middle of the night, will run out and attempt to tarp over the dig site, which again seems very reasonable thing to do before it rains, right? Before it rains, tarping it seemed really important to me. It seemed like buckets on the Titanic, and I don't mean for shitting, it felt like a futile effort, a Sisyphean attempt to do something, and I was like, why would you attempt to tarp it after rain had already been washing everything away? That seems futile, but we got an email about this. It's amazing.
Yeah. Jason from the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University. He has a PhD in vertebrate paleontology, writes, quote, I was inspired to hear Sue Brunning's email in last week's episode. As a paleontologist, my science also involves excavation-based data collection. The Dig was a profoundly moving experience for me. This film is all about that thing that I spend all my time thinking about, time and our place in it. It is so eloquent in its communication of topics I have a hard time relating to others. What is buried in the ground doesn't belong to the present or the past. It belongs to the future. We here in the present are stewards of the past in service of the future. It is a responsibility, and we in museums bear that responsibility. In The Dig, when Edith Pretty, played by Carey Mulligan, finally decides to donate the... Well, I guess I should... I haven't spoiled it quite yet. So, there's spoilers for The Dig in this email. So, in The Dig, spoilers for The Dig... When Edith Pretty, Carey Mulligan, finally decides to donate the artifacts to the British Museum, that's the spoiler part, I cheered. There is no more pure act of scientific support than donating a discovery to a museum, and I continue to cheer Sue Brunning and her staff doing the good work of keeping these materials accessible. In case Dr. Brunning doesn't respond to Jeff's question about the tarp in the rain, I'll happily field it. For buried objects as old as those of Sutton Hoo, and certainly for fossils as old as the ones I study, which are 360 million years old, what is holding these objects together is almost entirely the pressure of the surrounding sediment. Dirt at Sutton Hoo, rock in my case. So as long as that sediment is in place, the artifacts or fossils will hold together. Remove it, as we do in excavation, and the object will quickly fall apart into pieces, in some cases literal dust. Water accelerates that disintegration. Little water is good for adhesion, like building a sandcastle. A lot of water is really bad for adhesion, like a sandcastle in the rain. When we tarp an excavation site, we're trying to keep water off the fresh exposures of now disintegrating materials. If water is pooling in a quarry because of rain from above, the tarp helps. If water is pooling from below because the water table has risen to the surface, certainly the tarp does not help. Oftentimes in the field, we can't know which is responsible for the pooling, so we tarp and we bail the water. Is it sometimes fruitless? Oh, yes. But tarping is easy, but not foolproof way to protect a site. Thanks for reading. Love the podcast. Been listening for my entire adult life, it seems.
I feel like there is a life lesson in this. You tarp. You tarp because you can. It's the only thing you can do.
Sometimes it works.
When all is lost, you tarp.
Even when it seems like tarping will do nothing, you still tarp.
You still tarp.
Well, thank you so much to Jason for that message. We really appreciate it. And also, Sue Brunning did write back. She generously offered to answer all of our questions and give us a tour if we're ever in the UK. So,
oh boy,
that's something that we can.
Awesome, amazing.
We should do. when
You know what,
we are
guys?
able to leave the country again.
I'm gonna get that vaccine after all.
She says, quote, if circumstance should ever bring you to London in the future, I'd be delighted to give you the grand tour and answer these questions, end quote. So thanks to Sue
That's
for
amazing.
that generous offer as well. I'm glad that finally swung it for you, Jeff. You know, I've been I've been like ragging on you for weeks. Just get the vaccine, Jeff. And
Finally, a reason to leave my house. I was like,
Yeah.
why? What possible reason would I have to leave my house, Dave? Now you gave me one. Thank you, Sue.
I mean, you're being a little sarcastic, but you are genuinely grateful, I think, right?
I'm genuinely grateful.
yeah.
Also, there was no moment where I didn't want to get the vaccine.
Please get your vaccine, everybody.
Yes.
Please.
Thanks to all of your emails. Keep them coming in to /filmcast@gmail.com. All right. Let's talk about what we've been watching. We got a lot of stuff to cover today on what we've been watching. I want to start by talking about a movie called I Care a Lot. Have you guys heard of this movie, I Care a Lot, that's on Netflix right now?
I'm annoyed I didn't get to see it this weekend, but yeah, I'm looking forward
How
to it.
could you not?
You're
if you
annoyed you
have
didn't
Netflix?
see it this past weekend? Is that what you're saying, Devindra?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. So this is a new movie by Jay Blakeson that stars Rosamund Pike and some a lot of other talented people. Isaac Gonzalez, Diane Wiest, Chris Messina, Peter Dinklage, like great cast.
I heard Wiest is amazing.
She's everyone is awesome in this movie. So
I love a good Wiest.
Can I?
I do. She's
Yeah,
amazing.
she's
I
great.
love Wiest.
Loved her in Synecdoche.
Lost
She's awesome.
Boys.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, do you guys mind if I disclose the premise of this movie? I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah, I know.
Devindra's fine with the premise. Jeff, if you don't want to hear the premise,
Sure,
like take the
sure.
headphones off
Give
for a
me the
minute. But so the premise, I'm going to read the plot summary, is basically I'm going to give even less information away than what the premise is. But essentially, the movie is about Rosamund Pike, who plays a woman named Marla Grayson, great name, and she is a legal guardian, right? So people become wards of the state. They need someone to take care of all their finances and their houses and their assets and stuff. Marla Grayson is one of those people. Problem is, and this is revealed in literally the opening, 5 minutes of the film, is she's often quote unquote taking care of people who don't need taking care of, guys. She's taking care of people who don't need her services. But
Quite the grift.
yeah, but
Because she cares a lot.
no, but I mean, that's what she says out externally, Jeffrey. But you see, there's this irony in the title because maybe the movie asks the question, she doesn't care a lot, question mark?
Oh.
What?
I know.
Maybe the care was the lot we learned along the way. No? I tried to make it into a thing.
So Rosamund Pike is a super talented actress. Loved her in Gone Girl. And
She's also very good at this, apparently, right?
Yeah. Well, but
I heard this is like a Gone Girl sequel, basically.
in a way, right? I mean, she could basically be playing the same exact character.
Yeah.
She is very much an anti-heroine in this movie. And here's my problem with this movie. I was super enjoying this movie for the first 2/3. This was going to be one of my favorite movies of 2021 so far. And then the movie shits the bucket in the final third, in my opinion. I mean, basically,
Shit the bucket.
basically, the problem that this movie has is, and it's very similar to another movie called Layer Cake, by the way. Like in every way, in terms of the plot, in terms of the style, in
love
terms
Layer
of the
Cake, yeah.
editing, in terms of literally the color grading of Layer Cake is similar to the color grading in
Are
this
you
movie.
saying this is a Layer Cake sequel? Then I am down. Yes.
But the problem with comparing this movie to Layer Cake is the main character is so unforgivable in this film because she is victimizing it's elder abuse, right? She's
Yeah,
victimizing the weakest, most helpless people in society other than babies. It's babies and then elderly people, basically. Like that's
Dave
the
has
hierarchy.
a frequently updated weakest people list.
That's right. Every week I check my power rankings of society. It's babies at the bottom every week. And then
For the
elderly people close second. to the
600th
bottom.
week in a row, babies. Still the weakest.
I know.
Come on,
It
babies.
never changes.
Come on.
It's because their skulls are too large. It's an evolutionary thing, right? They're born with skulls that are too large. They're helpless. They can't walk. So anyway, The main character, like, imagine Layer Cake. So, do you guys remember what the main character in Layer Cake does?
Yes.
He's
cocaine.
I do not.
He's a drug dealer. He's a drug
Yeah.
dealer, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
imagine if, but in the movie Layer Cake, he's a middle person, right? He's not like
Yeah.
selling drugs directly to the end user. But imagine if like that was his job. Imagine if his job in the movie was selling drugs to kids, and then they
Babies.
showed you the kids,
weakest.
and aka the weakest in society, right? And then
Yeah.
they showed you the kids' lives being horribly ruined by him selling the drugs, right? Like,
Yeah.
you would.
So you're saying Breaking Bad?
Well, even Breaking Bad, they don't really dwell on like the terrible consequences of his actions. They
There's a
dwell
little
on the
bit of that,
consequences of
but
his
yeah.
actions to his family, but like not
Right.
to society as a whole. In my opinion, at least, you get a taste of it. You get a taste
Yeah.
of it. And unfortunately, this movie, right, really, right from the jump, makes the character completely unforgivable. Like, I cannot root for this person, and in fact, I am hoping they suffer a terrible death. And that's a
But
problem.
that is the enjoyment.
Well, that's a
of
problem
of
for
a
this
person like
film
this.
because I think the movie is positioning her as kind of the anti-heroine, right? It's positioning her as the Walter White or the Daniel Craig character in Layer Cake, where like despite their flaws, despite the fact that they're into unsavory things, you kind of root for these people. You kind of want them to
Right.
succeed a little bit, at least. And I just like I don't want any part of what this person's doing to succeed. So that is the fundamental flaw of the movie, and as a result, it made me really angry. So I can't say I like this movie, but you get to
I
see.
You
guarantee
enjoyed
you-
2/3 of the movie, Dave.
I guarantee you, Devindra
Two-thirds.
loves this movie.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
I probably could.
Ro-
Because if I like most of a movie and the ending is just so, that is still a mostly liked movie. That's Matt. Come on, Dave.
So
Dave, you always round up on your likings.
You always round
know
up. You're
that.
right. You're right. 2/3 of a movie is basically one good movie, right? So I don't.
That's better than most movies.
two-
Yes.
I love the optimism, Davina. So anyway, wasn't a fan. Movie made me actively angry, and at the same time, you get to see Rosamund Pike doing her thing. Peter Dinklage is in this movie, and this is like my favorite role of Peter. Like, I've seen Peter Dinklage in X-Men. I've seen Peter Dinklage in Avengers: Infinity War. This is my favorite Peter Dinklage role that I've seen.
Isn't he like a crime lord in this movie or something?
I'm not going to say who he is, but I'll just say
I want to see this.
I'll just
I wanna
say
see that.
this is my
Yes.
favorite role of his post Game of Thrones. He is
Okay.
he is great in this movie. So
I
it's
just thought
not
it was so weird that you were listing off the best Peter Dinklage roles, and those are the two you picked. And then I realized, post Game of Thrones, I guess.
Game of
But I was
Thrones,
like, you're not
yeah.
station agent. You're not bringing it. No, there's no.
sorry. I'm sorry you're not a fan of Boulevard Trask, Jeff. Okay. Anyway, so it's not completely without merit. Like there's still a lot of good things to recommend it, but it just. I just found that the movie wasn't rooting for the same things I was rooting for, and that's just a really painful cognitive dissonance for me. So, anyway,
Sounds like at least you cared a lot.
that is true, Jeffrey. That is true. Nailed it.
Yeah.
That's I Care a Lot. It's streaming right now on Netflix. Okay. I also had a chance to watch Freaky, which is
I'm
streaming
so
right now
excited
video on
to
demand.
hear what you think about this movie.
I really enjoyed it. And Jeff, I think that here's the thing I don't like about what you said about in your review, Jeff.
Here's what I don't like about.
Yeah, here's the thing I
you.
don't like about you. This is something I say every episode. Is I think during the review you said that this movie, Freaky, which has Vince Vaughn playing a serial killer and what's her name? Catherine Newton playing kind of the innocent high school girl that he switches places with. You said this movie, Freaky, should have been called Freaky Friday the 13th. Did you say that?
I did.
And
Yep.
I could not stop thinking about that the entire film.
Because I was so
You
right.
ruined it.
because
so
it is
right.
so you are so right. You have never been more right about anything, including Nomadland, than in your assessment of Freaky.
Right? It needed the IP. It would have been so much better with the actual IP, right?
It would have been. Not only would it have been better with the IP, it clearly wanted to be that.
Yes. It wanted
Like,
that so bad. It was a
wanted
spec
it
script that somebody wrote, hoping that they could persuade whoever owns the
Yeah.
IP to Friday the 13th. Yes.
Unfortunately, by the way, I learned recently, like, Friday the 13th, like the rights for that franchise are basically in legal limbo. It's very likely we won't see another Friday the 13th film until literally the people involved in the lawsuit
Oh man.
die. Probably, like,
a shame.
it's
Mysteriously
Yeah.
in the woods.
it's probably not, like, it's gonna be many, many years before we see another Friday the 13th movie.
I
So
was about to say, like, it couldn't be a taste thing, right? Like, they had no problem with a lot of those other Friday. the
no,
13th
I think
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
like who
Yeah.
basically who gets the money from, like, making new Friday the 13th movies or Friday the 13th affiliated movies. So very unfortunate that it's probably going to be in legal limbo for a really long time. But
Yeah, as great as Vince Vaughn is, it would have been so much funnier.
oh my god,
Right?
Can you
Right, yeah.
imagine? Like, it just would have been so perfect. That said,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie, and it's enjoyable because it's playing with the same ingredients that you know from other body swap films, but
Yeah.
it is reconfiguring them in a very different way. Like, imagine if body swap movies are like Taco Bell, and what I mean by that is they just take the same ingredients and they rearrange them, in different configurations. That's basically what going to Taco
Yeah.
Bell is, right? And that's what body swap movies are. But what Freaky does is it's like, instead of ground beef, what if we threw in General Tso's chicken or something like that? Or like something that you're like, I
Oh
can't.
man,
in
you
my
were doing
wildest-
so well with this analogy up until that
Yeah.
part.
Well,
you
that's
were
what I'm
like
saying.
knocking it out of the park with that analogy, and then you got to there, and it
But
just
that's what I'm
sort of
saying.
fell
Jeff.
apart
That's what
on
I'm
you.
saying. Is you don't see it coming. Imagine if it was something that you're like, that's so weird, I would never have seen it coming. And
Yeah.
in this case, in the analogy, it is General Tso's chicken, or in this case, switching places with a serial killer. So it still has all the beats of a body swap comedy, which is that both people kind of learn something about themselves, and then like the elements of a body swap comedy are both people need to learn something about themselves, and then the other person who has swapped into your body needs to teach you like a better way to use your body, right? That's like, and it's like,
Yeah.
well,
for
how
stabbing.
well, how are you
Yeah.
going to do that in a movie where you swap places a serial killer, and the movie finds a way to do that? It's kind of strained at some points in doing that, but it's like, oh, it's kind of fun and inventive how it does it. So I had a lot of fun with Freaky. I think
Yeah.
it's just a blast. Like, don't take it too
Surprisingly
seriously.
good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, don't take it too seriously. As you said, the biggest pleasure of this movie is watching Vince Vaughn act like a high school girl.
Yeah.
Wasn't a fan of the like Aztec Mayan, element to the sort of dagger thing they had. Like, that was a little
Yeah.
bit icky, but everything else I thought was a delight. And it's a fun, relatively low budget, gory horror film, R-rated. Check it out. It's free.
Some
So
really
what
fun
will-
kills.
Yeah, some really fun kills. Yeah. Go ahead, Devendra.
I'm wondering, what will Christopher Landon remix next? Because he is just kind of on a roll right
Yeah.
now. Between this and like Happy Death Day and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. But super talented guy, and I had a great time with Freaky. It's available right now on video on demand. All right, those are the things I've been watching. Let's go to you, Jeff. What are you watching?
Well, I have a movie that I think you would actually like, Dave. It seems like right up your alley. Before I ever was on this here podcast, when I was doing the Totally Rad show,
When your life was idyllic, happy, you're frolicking in fields,
Yeah.
without
Didn't-
a care in the world.
didn't have to do a single limerick. Just didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
There was a documentary that still ranks as one of my favorite documentaries of all time. And it is a documentary called Best Worst Movie.
Yes. Michael Stevenson, right?
Michael Paul Stevenson, who was in the original Troll 2 as a child actor, then directed a documentary about Troll 2, the designated as one of the worst movies of all time, but people love it because it's so bad. It is a delightful documentary. It is surprising and endearing and amazing. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen Best Worst Movie, definitely I don't know where you can find it. I'm maybe streaming somewhere, but hunt it down. It's wonderful. Well, Michael Paul Stevenson is that was, I think, his first documentary, but he has gone on to make more documentaries, and his newest, which literally just debuted, is called Attack of the Murder Hornets. Attack of the Murder Hornets.
Sounds pleasant. Yeah.
Yes, and this is a movie that was made very, very recently about the thing that I'm sure all of us saw the headline probably on Twitter about, which is the fucking murder hornets that were discovered in North America for the first time, and specifically in the Pacific Northwest in Dave's neck of the woods. These are called Asian giant hornets. They're native to Japan, and they somehow, we don't know how, the movie kind of goes into the various theories, but somehow made their way to North America. And these things are goddamn nightmare machines.
Yeah. There's great YouTube videos of them, by the way, of just them like destroying a bee's hive.
Yes, yes. They call them murder hornets because they go into a beehive and they behead all of the bees. They behead them,
as you do,
and eat their thoraxes. And so it's literally like a goddamn murder scene.
The Conan the Barbarians of the whatever
yes.
this insect family
and
is.
They're enormous. I mean, it looks like something out of a sci-fi film in real life. They are alien creatures. They're huge hornets, and they're wreaking havoc in the Pacific Northwest on bee farmers. And we know that bees are pretty important to the ecosystem of the world. I think Einstein said, if the bees go away, 4 years later, humans go away. So it's bad. This is an invasive species. And this is a documentary about what people are doing about it and the people that are trying to do things about it. And it is fascinating. I mean, it gave me serious heebie-jeebies, just made my skin crawl numerous times because there's lots of shots of these things doing their shit that they do. And so if you're triggered by bugs, this may not be the movie for you, but it's also really interesting. And you see the process by which they try to hunt these things. And it's like, how do you kill a bug that you don't know very much about? And how do you find it? How do you track it? How do you eradicate it? It's this mission to eradicate it because it's literally could be
an existential threat to humanity, basically.
Yes. Anyway, very, very interesting. I thought it was really cool. It's a brisk 90 minutes. If I don't know where it's streaming,
how did you acquire it?
Michael Paul Stevenson sent me a link. We kind of become friendly, and he's awesome. And he sent me a link to check it out. I think it is just debuting. It's I think maybe on Discovery or something.
It's on Discovery Plus.
Yeah. So check it out. I found it. It's not something that I probably would have clicked on myself because I get a little weirded out by bugs, but I'm really glad I watched it. I learned a lot, and I thought the journey, the sort of roller coaster ride of like, how do you even deal with this? There's kind of a mystery, not a mystery, but more like an adventure story of these guys trying to find and kill these things, and the wild personalities of all the people involved. It's pretty interesting. I dug it. Attack of the Murder Hornets.
Michael Paul Stevenson and I are kind of friends too, and or so I thought, Jeff, until you said that just now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't
How
get.
does it feel like to be left out of a screener?
I didn't get pinged with any link.
Oh, this feels so much sweeter now.
So I don't know if you're listening, Michael, but not cool, man. Not cool to send Jeff the link.
Extremely cool. Extremely cool.
Not cool. Any interest I had in Attack of the Murder Hornets completely eradicated now because Michael Paul Stevenson, director of Attack of the Murder Hornets, streaming on Discovery, did not send me a link personally, and now I'm deeply hurt. Jeff Canado, what else did you watch this week?
I checked out the new CNN show. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about a show on CNN, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen,
they do good food shows. Yeah.
called Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy. This is, Stanley Tucci positioned as the new Anthony Bourdain, evidently. Very similar in the sense that it is beautifully shot travel porn with food porn. It's very much live vicariously through Stanley Tucci as he eats delicious things, talks to interesting people, and goes to beautiful, idyllic locations. As somebody who was married in Italy, has Italian heritage, I already was sort of eating it up. No pun intended.
Nailed it.
And Stanley Tucci literally looks like my relatives. I mean, he looks like my cousins almost exactly. In fact, my dad texted me today and was like, have you watched the Stanley Tucci show on CNN? And I went, Dad, yeah, I already watched it. And he's like, doesn't it look like our family? And I was like, yeah, it does, Dad.
That's how it works.
And the thing I learned most about Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy is that Stanley Tucci can wear a shirt. That dude knows how to wear a shirt.
Have you not seen how much of the internet is just thirsty for Stanley Tucci at this point?
Dude,
it is ridiculous.
He can wear a shirt.
Sure.
That dude, like the costume designer on that show. I mean, he must be wearing $500 shirts. They are like exquisite, incredible
the
shirts.
The best. Come on.
Yeah. He's I was like, oh man, this is amazing. But it's interesting between this and Attack of the Murder Hornets, both of them.
So curious what your next sentence is going to be.
I'm going to make a comparison.
They both make you very hungry.
They're almost exactly the same experience. No,
one of them is about a creature eating its way through an ecosystem, and the other one is the Attack of the Murder Hornets.
One of them is an invasive species where he should not be, devouring everything in sight. No, they are both, documentary content that was created after COVID started, which is, I think, the first stuff that I've watched like that. And it is so weird, man. It's so weird watching like everybody refer to COVID, masked people everywhere in this documentary style. Like it's weird. Both of them were shot during COVID, and it's such a new paradigm, and it really is. We've gotten to the point where content is coming out that was not made before the world changed. And reflects the way the world is now.
When you see that in some of the new shows, by the way. But yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, how do you? I think the thing that, well, here's my question: is it obvious that people have taken safety measures? Do they disclose at all, or is it like, is everyone wearing masks? Like, how is it? Is it conveyed in any way that protocols have been taken to like protect, basically?
Stanley Tucci in the first episode of Searching for Italy, like specifically calls it out and says,
good.
Like explains, this area was hit. We came here. We're following it. You never see him. Well, that's not true. Not never. There's a couple of times in a car where he's wearing one, but almost never is he wearing a mask. But a lot of other people are wearing a mask. And Attack of the Murder Hornets, like people are wearing masks throughout, and they make reference to COVID. They compare the Murder Hornets as being equally threatening to life on this planet as a pandemic. It's very much in the zeitgeist of both of these shows.
That's fascinating. And you say it feels weird. Like, I'm curious, like, do you not like it? Because I guess.
No, it just feels like. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm cool with it as long as they acknowledge because they're trying to entertain us in a very different circumstance, and as long as they acknowledge the reality of it, I'm okay with it. I guess I have a very limited slice of content that I'm not okay with. Right, the content I'm not okay with is like content that's like about the pandemic or content that like it's very very like. They try to disguise the fact that it was made during the pandemic, but it's like, it all takes place in one room with two people or whatever.
No, I think that's exactly what's so weird to me about it. Is that
it's not those.
It's not the point.
Yeah.
It's like it's just this thing that is also happening. And what's weird is like,
Yeah.
that is what's also happening in the like. This is
We've
not even
reached
what
the
it's about.
acceptance phase. We've reached the
Yes.
acceptance phase of
Yes.
this phase of whatever we're in. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I guess like I'm theoretically okay if like, hey, people are trying to make entertaining content and they're taking precautions, like it feels okay to me. And
Well,
also
sure.
it
I
feels like
agree.
it's not we're not going to be in this for that much longer unless again, I mean, as long as
yeah.
humanity does the right thing in the next 6 months, we're going to be fine, guys. So
Yeah, there's no way we can screw this up.
we can't screw this one up. I'm laughing to keep from crying. Anyway,
There's no way Americans will shit the bucket on this one.
So Stanley Tucci, Searching for Italy, you recommend, Jeff, overall?
Yeah, I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, it's a very specific kind of show, and it's a very if you like those shows or not, right? It's a very good version of shows that are around a lot. That it's not doing anything special. It's just
is
like
it more than just him eating? Like, is he actually engaging with the culture and doing different things?
Yes, I mean he is talking about these different regions of Italy and investigating, and there's a lot of history of like the pizza, for example, in the first episode, like where it came from in Napoli and all there's a lot of information to be gained too, foodie type information, and it's a very entertaining version of this, and it's if you like Anthony Bourdain, if you like the numerous other Food Network shows that are like this, you'll like this too, and if Stanley Tucci makes a great host of a show like this. Like the dude clearly cooks a lot, right? I mean, Big Night was like autobiographical, right? So, and so he can, and he speaks Italian, which is awesome. So he can like fluently converse with all these Italians. And a lot of the show is just spoken in Italian, which is really kind of neat. So yeah, clearly like he loves
the
it.
shirts and the Italian,
dude.
Come on,
yes.
Tucci.
I mean, come on, and no socks, never socks.
Oh,
He's just. It's beautiful.
He's kind of he's one of those guys that is very talented and just overall quite likable. He's very pleasant. He comes off as very pleasant and amiable. I'd have no problem watching a cooking show or
even when he's playing
show.
a character that's kind of a jerk. Yeah, like he is always. You still want to be his friend. Yeah. Jeff, one question for you: How do you watch Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix?
I have not watched that. Somebody recommended that to me. Yeah.
It is very good. I think you'd appreciate that. But I'm just wondering because, hey, after Bourdain left us, I felt like none of the food shows could really keep up, right? Like all the travel shows just felt like they were all worse in comparison. So I've been looking for something. Somebody Feeds Phil is pretty good and very light, but it sounds like this one's pretty light too, I guess.
It is very light. Yeah. I don't think it has the edge that Bourdain had, but I don't think it's trying to. It's good though.
I was just listening to former guest of the show, Dan Murrell, has a podcast called All My Movies, where he reviews all the movies he has, like physical media he has. And he recently discussed Transformers: Age of Extinction. I think you guys remember that movie. But anyway, it stars Stanley Tucci.
No. Yeah.
And also, the movie is quite. Can I just say, it's just so weird, guys, that we had this series of movies that ate like 12 years of Michael Bay's directorial career, and that hugely respected actors, like Academy Award winning actors like Frances McDormand, who's the star of our movie today,
They need money.
all just kind of like, we're like, hey, yeah, I'll stop by this movie. I'll do a little stint.
John Turturro.
John Turturro,
I mean, he was no G. He was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Really
It's just so
committed to
weird.
that franchise.
Kelsey Grammer. It's just so weird that this, and there's no memory whatsoever of any of these films, right? Like I don't. If you were like, tell me the plot of Transformers: Age of Extinction for $1,000, I wouldn't be able to do it.
The
And those movies
ultimate
kept doing
disposable.
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad that Tucci's come back from that, man. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
I don't think you can touch
He's
Tucci,
sitting
right?
pretty.
He like wore the goofy wig in the Hunger Games movies. No rub, no negative rub on Tucci. Like, let him. He wore the weird teeth, for that movie. Like, well, okay, go for it, Tucci. Do it. You be you, buddy. Get that.
He was
paycheck.
Herb Kazaz in BoJack Horseman. I loved him in that as well. Yeah. All right. Anyway, Kanata, what else you been watching?
Well, so I decided. I don't know if you guys know this, but I've lost a couple of jobs in the last couple of months. Found myself a little extra time on my hands, and I decided, finally,
Yes.
I was going to force myself to like The Expanse.
I mean, that's not what you're supposed to do.
This is my
But okay.
third attempt at watching The Expanse. And
Okay.
I am just so angry when I see tweets of people like, The Expanse is the greatest sci-fi series of all time. Oh my God, The Expanse is the greatest thing ever. Jeff Bezos like literally paid to have more episodes of it because it's just so great. And I always felt I had a little FOMO. I had a little, I felt like I was outside looking in.
Great
and I
impression
tried.
of our listeners, by the way, Jeff.
I mean,
Jeff
I've seen
Bezos
the
is our
Expanse
listener?
tweets.
No.
I've seen
people tweeting about The Expanse and saying we should watch it.
the Expanse tweets are getting insane. But,
Yes.
Yeah, and they keep pressuring Jeff. Poor Jeff.
People love The Expanse. And dude, I harbor no ill will to that. I wanted to feel that love. I felt like I was missing out. And I literally have tried 3 times to watch The Expanse, and I never got past episode 3. I was just like, what? This is a slog. I don't. And then
It's a slow burn. Yeah.
a friend of mine was the breaking point. It was just a weird random friend on Twitter who was like, oh my God, The Expanse is the greatest thing ever. And I reached out and I was like, okay, tell me how many of these I need to watch to feel that way. Like what do I need to do? And I got a response from him, and I got a response from a bunch of other people who were like, season 2, episode 2. You have to get through season 1.
Yeah.
And they were saying, the climax of the first book, the James A. Corey book series, the climax of the first book doesn't happen at the end of season 1. It happens at the beginning of season 2. So it's a weirdly paced series. You think, like Game of Thrones, where they try to make each season a book, basically. So it crescendos at the end of that season. That's not what they did, at least with the first book. So people are like, you have to get through episode 2 of season 2. So I was like, okay, come hell or high water, I'm going to force myself to keep watching The Expanse until at least that point.
Good on you.
And I gotta say, it worked.
It's a good episode.
It worked. It really gets good. Here's the thing about The Expanse that I will say, and I will try not to spoil anything. But much like Game of Thrones, I mean, people compare it to Game of Thrones because there's a lot of different characters doing a lot of different things in a lot of different areas, and they all interact, and it's potentially very confusing. I read all of the Song of Ice and Fire books well before the series ever, started, and so maybe I was, I had an advantage in that sense that I was never, it never felt particularly overwhelmed or lost in that series. But I also kind of feel like even if I hadn't read the books, I probably wouldn't have felt lost or overwhelmed, because the first season of Game of Thrones is built around this mystery, right?
It's very straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. Who killed Robert Baratheon? Let's figure it out. And then everything sort of spreads out from there. You have everybody sort of in the same place at the same time for this event. And then they all scatter to the winds. And then all the other seasons are like all over the map because all the characters that we met in that first season have now scattered wildly around. The Expanse is the opposite of that. It is a mystery. It starts with a mystery, but it is every character wildly spread out. You have no idea how any of them interact with any of the other ones, or what these wildly disparate pieces of this puzzle, how they have anything to do with anything.
It's like a badly run RPG campaign at times. Doesn't it feel like that?
Yes,
like you're just not in the same place. Yeah,
it's like why do I care about any of these people? Like, what is happening? I love complex narratives. I love the puzzle pieces and the chess pieces all set up and then moved into place. I like that thing normally, but man, the first season of The Expanse just felt like I don't even know what is important and what's not important. Like, there's so many political things that feel like, is this even pertinent to the idea that we're talking about? It was all over the place. Mm-hmm. And it's the inverse of Game of Thrones. Like, all the people that are important to the story start super far apart and are doing
all the intrigue
things
all at once. Yeah.
Yes, and are doing wildly different things, and you cut between them, and you're like, these storylines have nothing to do with each other. I don't even know, like, they're not on the same planets. You know, it's just so muddled, in my opinion. But at the end of season 1, they all converge, and all of a sudden you go, oh, okay. And then it really kind of kicks into high gear, and it's super fun. And now I'm in. I'm into The Expanse.
Congrats.
Yes, my experiment worked, and I have to thank everybody who said episode 2 of season 2. And so if you are like me, if you maybe tried The Expanse or didn't try The Expanse, or kind of looked on the outside looking in on The Expanse and kind of wanted to get into it, this is my advice. Season 2, episode 2. And I almost feel like a lot of the season 1 stuff is unnecessary, but don't skip it. Like you can't really skip it.
This is
gotta
like
start.
very much the peak TV show where you kind of just have to power through that first.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break. I want to hear some more Expanse thoughts from Devindra after a quick word from our sponsors. All right, so Devindra Hardware, you have also coincidentally watched The Expanse this week, is that right?
I've been catching up over the past couple of weeks, just clearing out my backlog. Basically, I had stopped somewhere in season 4, and the thing about The Expanse is, if you stop keeping up with it for a while, it is easy to just like let it go, because there's so many plot threads and so many things, and other shows just kind of come in and replace it sometimes for me. So I've been catching up, and just have to say, like, yeah, season 4 completely reminded me of why I love this show so much. And I'm glad you're watching it now, Jeff, because my review basically would have been, again, convincing you to start watching this thing, because I do think it is doing some incredible stuff on TV. And I love Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, when it aired on Sci-Fi. And ever since then, no matter your feelings about how it ended, ever since then, I've been waiting for like the good space opera, the really good space stuff to really take a step forward from the way that show looked and what that show covered. And I feel like this is finally it. This show is wild and gives us like a really realistic look at the future, what society would be like if we had humanity spread out between Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt, and the different cultures that would arise. I love the people in the asteroid belt, I believe, just have this like very, very interesting patois that sounds similar to me as like something a lot of West Indians have, or almost like the stereotypical thing. It does feel weird sometimes to see a lot of actors coming with that dialogue, but I think it's a really interesting thing.
I thought about that, Devindra. I was like, how do they cast this? Like,
Jared Harris in the show, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, like, but how do you, like, in the casting process, they go, okay, you got to play a character that has a very specific accent that isn't from anywhere in
that doesn't exist.
It's a fake accent, but you have to do it consistently with the other people who have done it before on this show.
And most of them sound pretty good. Like when they have that accent, it almost feels like an affectation at times, but it also is, the show really does present the idea of like what humanity would kind of turn into if we were spread out like this. And the idea is basically factions of people, and a lot of people being jealous of Earth, and Mars being this weird little military fiefdom. It all really works, but I think this is one of those shows where you can really tell it is all from a book series, and that first season they just didn't know how to edit things down or really focus, and it really does get there in season 2 and refines more and more with the coming seasons. So yeah, I just started season 5. It feels even stronger and feels like they know where they're going. Love all the actors. I'm not sure if you've met Bobby Draper yet in the show, Jeff, but she is at this point one of my favorite characters in science fiction ever, because she is just tremendous and also played by an incredible actor. So like it's just really cool stuff like that. The show has big ideas about what would it be like if humanity made contact with some extraterrestrial life form. I will not spoil about how where things. Yeah, that is the thing. That is what the first season is kind of based on.
Well, you don't know that until the fucking second season, dude.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's the reveal of the second season.
If you've waited at this point, I'm giving people some something to actually watch this thing, because that should have been the first season. That actually should have been. I think that would have pushed a lot of sci-fi fans in there. But the show gets wilder. and weirder. And I will not say anymore, but I'm glad I kept up. And it is all, where's the Expanse now? It's all on Amazon Prime because
Yeah.
Amazon is making the new episode. So
Yeah.
check it out. It is worth watching.
Also looks really good. Like
Incredible.
the money is on the
Incredible.
screen in that show. You know,
Yeah.
all the CG is top notch. The sets are really well done. It really feels like, it doesn't feel like a set. It feels like a place that they're visiting. And it's impressive to do that on a TV budget.
That's The Expanse, seasons 1 through 5, available right now on Prime Video. All right, Devendra, what else have you been watching?
Just quickly, I like to shout out the anime I'm watching sometimes, and I've been checking out Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. This is a show that's been super popular, I believe, over the last year. It's on HBO Max right now. It is about a group of high school girls who love anime themselves. It's anime about people who love anime, and they form a high school club to make anime. So it's a very like meta show and a very self-referential show, but it's also very sweet thing about a group of people who are obsessed with this art form and want to create it and share why they love it with other people. It reminds me of things I used to do in high school and college. I used to, run our anime club, and that was a lot of fun at the time. So yeah, really digging this. It is a fun show with great characters. It's really funny, has a great animation as well, and it's worth pointing out, I believe the anime series is it's directed by Masaki Yuasa, who's done a ton of great stuff. He that latest Devilman Crybaby on Netflix, he did. He was also involved with like shows like Ping Pong the Animation and Tatami Galaxy. I love them all. So if you like interesting anime with unique art styles, check this out.
All right, that's Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. How did you watch this show?
It's on HBO Max.
Got it. Yeah, they have a lot of anime stuff.
They do, yeah.
Ghibli, Studio Ghibli movies and stuff like that. So, all right. And what else have you been watching, Devendra?
Final thing, guys, we're talking about all these fake things. We're talking about The Expanse.
We're talking about all these fake things.
Fake space. Fucking like what is even this? This week, NASA landed a rover on Mars, and this morning we got video footage of that landing. And I just have to tell everybody right now, listening, if you have not seen this footage, go watch it on the biggest screen you can.
Made me cry. Seriously.
It is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It is it's like 3 minutes long, the actual landing sequence, but it shows the rover kind of going through, basically right after it cuts through Mars atmosphere. You see the heat shield fall off, which looks almost exactly like that shot that is repeated so many times of like it also heat shields blowing away, or the thruster rocket that is often falling away from space shots in space movies. Looks fantastic. It is crazy that we're getting footage like this at this point. We're getting a ton of photos. There's going to be more footage coming, as long as that rover is working. It's a beautiful thing. So if you like science fiction, if you like our Expanse talk, pay attention to what's happening in the real world. It's incredible.
All right, that's the Mars Perseverance landing, and yeah, it's amazing. Science fiction has become reality. Incredible. Amazing what the human race can do when it puts its mind to it. All right, folks, let's do some quick weekly plugs.
This is weird.
I wanted them to be super excited.
Rods, reels, and romance.
So good.
We're texting each other furiously.
I love that you did that.
Unsolicited. Let me tell you, taking it away takes a lot to get us to furiously text.
So good.
Unsolicited.
All over the place. So good. So good.
Let the internet have its way.
Plugs. But we might cut it down.
The best
That's
part.
Thomas Medina's remix of the Weekly Plugs music that was originally created by Noah Ross. The Weekly Plugs are part of the show each week where we plug something that we've created, we've been in, or that someone else has been in that we are a fan of. This week, I did a video review of I Care a Lot, and the Netflix movie that I talked about earlier today. And let me just tell you guys, like, I don't, Devendra, you make YouTube videos pretty regularly at this point, and Jeff, you have certainly had your experience with YouTube as well. The thing about YouTube that I think is really interesting is, for me, the experience is very much like dropping a message in a bottle into like a flowing stream, and like I have no idea how far it's going to be carried, right? Like sometimes it'll go like 10 feet, and sometimes it'll go like a mile, you know? And I could tell pretty quickly that this YouTube video was going to be popular because of how like quickly the views were accumulating on it, because apparently a lot of people are also really angry about this movie. Basically, I'm getting like
Listen,
hundreds
if you
of
tap into anger, that is a great way to rack up YouTube views
yeah,
for sure.
Sadly, that's actually kind of depressing because
Yeah.
because the thing is, I don't like. It's not an affectation for me. Like, I don't say like this movie made me angry unless it literally made me angry, which happens like once or twice a year. Maybe a movie makes me angry, so it's not like it happens every week. And but this one legitimately made me angry, so I made a video about it, and it's gotten like hundreds of comments of people saying like, I literally just watched the movie and came on here to talk about how, like, to see if anyone else was also angry about the movie, and I'm glad to find this video. So, if you watched I Care a Lot and are angry about it, check out my video review. But yeah, it's just interesting to see what gets picked up by the algorithm these days, what doesn't. Devindra Hardawar, what is a weekly plug you have for our listeners today?
Oh yeah, last week I got to chat with Alex Kranz, a colleague of mine, formerly at the blog Gizmodo. She is from Texas, so I talked to her about the Texas power grid and why it completely failed last week, and what happened there. Thought we had a really good chat about not just Texas, but the state of infrastructure in America as a whole. So yeah, check it out at the Engadget podcast, and maybe you'll learn something about why our country can't keep power running properly. It's terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really upsetting to read all the news
Yep.
coming out of Texas. Devindra, I think it really hit you on an emotional level, from my sense, like in our group
ridiculous.
text about it, right?
It is absolutely ridiculous because we go into this in the show, but the Texas, their power market is completely unregulated. It is a grid. We talked a little about this last week too. It is a grid completely disconnected from the rest of the country, but that free market sensibility has absolutely failed the entire state. And now we're seeing people getting stuck with huge bills. That's something they're gonna, it seems like the state is just trying to stop, but none of this should be happening. I hope it's a warning sign to the rest of the country, because it's not just Texas and it's not just the wildfires in California. Like every part of this country is facing some sort of infrastructure danger from climate change. So yeah, I hope it's a wake up call. That's all.
I've been really discouraged at how not a wake up call a lot of things have happened are.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
First of all, let me start by saying like I have a lot of friends who live in Texas, and I've like been reaching out to them this week, and I hope if you are in Texas, like you're doing okay. I know a lot of people have gone through a lot this past week, and they're struggling with either sky high electric bills, or no water, or damage to their homes.
Or having to come back from Cancun early.
Yeah, indeed.
There's a lot of different kinds of problems people are
That
dealing
was a
with.
great night on Twitter. I'll be honest.
So pure.
Yeah.
So pure.
Yeah.
Like primarily, I just want to say, like, if you are living there, like, we are hoping that you're doing okay. Our thoughts are with you. But yeah, I'm also, Devindra, you were like angry about it, I think, and like that the state has failed all these people in Texas. And for me, I'm just deeply saddened because it just feels like the last 12 months has been a nonstop, continuous time period of revealing all the weaknesses in American infrastructure and society, basically. Like all of America's weaknesses laid bare, in terms of racial justice, in terms of public health, and now in terms of our ability to deal with weird weather and climate change. And the logical reaction, in my opinion, to these things is, oh my God, like things are horribly broken, like horribly broken. We must come together and fix these things now if we want to survive as a species. And that's just not what's happening, and it's so discouraging. It's so saddening. I know there is hope. There is hope in that can be found in like the people that are doing good things, that are helping neighbors and bailing their friends out and so on. But I just, on a deep level, I wish we all had more faith in something like our ability to govern ourselves and like the power of government to be able to solve these problems. But that faith is not shared by everyone, and it's really sad. So that's been my reaction, and
Yep.
I think we're all processing the news in different ways, and I don't at all mean to downplay anything that people are actually going through who live there, but that's kind of been my reaction watching it all play out.
Yeah, my thing is, I hope this is a wake up call to a lot of people in terms of who they vote for and things like that, right? Like Ted Cruz did not win Texas by a wide margin. It was very close. So hopefully this will shift things, but this has been an ongoing problem in this country. Puerto Rico, which is part of the United States, still does not have full power, and it seems like we've just completely forgotten about taking care of that territory. So I want more, demanding more. Hopefully, if you feel strongly, please donate. There are a lot of great resources for you to do that. And talk to your representatives. Like, there are things you can speak up for and vote for locally, too, that'll affect some sort of change.
Jeff Kanata, share a weekly plug with us, won't you?
Equally important weekly plug. We stopped doing the dungeon run. Caffeine let us go, and we're working to bring the dungeon run back. In the meantime, the cast of the dungeon run and I are playing a different kind of tabletop role-playing game called Fiasco. This is basically create a movie, improvise the creation of a movie in real time. And we did it once before. It was such a blast. We did a noir, murder mystery type, classic detective story, hard-boiled noir detective story. A few weeks ago, it was incredible. Like, all of the story beats added up, and it was really fun, really fun. So we're doing it again, and it is happening on Wednesday. You may have already, you may be listening to this. May have already happened, but Wednesday the 24th at 6 p.m. Pacific time on the Hello Goodberry channel on Twitch. That is Hello Goodberry, twitch.tv/Hello Goodberry. And if you hear this after February 24th, you'll still be able to watch the archived version of it. We are doing a module for Fiasco called Camp Death, which is basically an 80s teen slasher movie template. So we're going to create a real slasher movie in real time. I'm sure it'll be funny. I'm really looking forward to this one. So check it out over at Hello Goodberry.
All right. Those are our weekly plugs this week. We're about to get to our review of Nomadland. Before we do, I do just want to mention we recorded the Nomadland review before we recorded the first part of the show. And actually, I think it's safe to say two things. Number one, we kind of spoil Nomadland like at some point before we get to the spoiler bumper. So like if you are really cautious about spoilers for Nomadland, like maybe don't listen to the review or listen to it after you've watched the movie. But number two, it's basically impossible to spoil Nomadland in my opinion. Like it's not very much happens. I don't think it's a plot driven film. So those are my thoughts. The caveat before you head into this review, there are spoilers, but also it's hard to spoil this movie. So be cautious. In any case, here is our review of Nomadland. All right. Thanks to everyone in the chat room for tuning in. We're about to record the After Dark, but we'll see you next week, folks.
Thank you.
Shall we take a bio break, gentlemen?